welcome to the podcast, Gena and Leah. And before we start, it would be really cool just to maybe, as much as you want to, introduce yourself, and let's all say a little bit about you. Um, yeah. Leah, I don't know if you want to start
Yeah,
with that.
sure. So I'm Leah. I'm a social worker, and I started working for Mothers Helpers in 2020 when we went into our first lockdown. I had seen an appeal on Facebook, I think, requesting some volunteer support for mums who were struggling in lockdown with adjustment to parenting and depression and anxiety on their own because there was such limited support. And I had just decided that I wanted to come out of, I guess, parental leave that had been 12 years and and start doing some social work again. And so I started working with Christina and Mothers Helpers to talk with moms who are really isolated in the pandemic, and trying to find support. And there was not a lot out there for them because the face-to-face contact through their midwives and hospital supports and community supports was all called back. So we had quite a few clients coming to us who didn't have other avenues of ways to reach out for help. And shortly after that, I started working in a more, I guess, in another way for Mothers Helpers, but that's how it started. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, and you started it on a voluntary capacity during that really severe, well, I call it severe lockdown that back in 2020 that we had, that level 4 lockdown that seemed so hard at the time. So it was really nice that you gave back, and then I just saw that you just were such a great fit, and we had that thing, didn't we, where I was kind of thinking, I wonder if Leah would consider working for us, and you were thinking, I wonder if Christina would consider me working, or something like that, wasn't it? Something like that.
It was that. And we actually sent an email exactly like in the same minute. It was
Yeah,
literally in the same minute.
yeah,
I said I'd be willing to work a bit more on a more regular basis. And you had offered me work on a regular basis, and it actually crossed paths in the cyber
yeah.
world, which is weird.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
it was just it was meant to be, I think. And we've never let you go ever since. So so that was
Yeah.
really good. I mean, it's great to have you, and you've been you are such a valuable member of our team. And Gena, what do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, well, I'm Gena, and I'm also a social worker and a busy mum like the rest of us. I've got 5 children, and I'm actually based in Christchurch, which always makes me feel a little bit left out sometimes with our 2 other, you 2 in the North Island. Well, Christina, you're not at the moment, but normally.
Yeah.
But I also feel it's quite special. I'm like, I love when I get a South Island based person. I'm like, yes, someone from my half of the world. And so that always makes me feel quite special that I currently am the only South Island person. So it's nice to connect to people from different parts of the country. And so I've been with Mothers Helpers since August 2020, and I took it on as a 2-hour-a-week job just to do group once a week, and that quickly formed into a couple of groups a week, and now it's, I don't even know how many hours it is, I don't count, but it's become, since December 2021, it's become one of my main jobs, and I love it. Like, it always makes me excited to talk to mothers and support mothers in situations that either I've been in or I've had friends in, and you can sort of relate to them on a mother to mother level, but you also relate, you've got your professional hat on and you're able to support them in a professional way as well. And I just think it's such a privilege to help mums. I have a firm belief that if we help mums, we make happy mums, we make happy babies, which make happy mums in the future, or happy parents in the future. So
yeah, and so that answers my question about why Mother's Helpers. Is there anything you would add, Leah, to why you've were drawn to Mother's Helpers?
Yeah, so I also had my own experience with postnatal depression with my second two children, and I didn't know that I was struggling as much as I was, and I didn't realize how how much fallout there was from the experience of depression and anxiety that I had, and the impact that it had on my relationships with the people in my life, but also my relationship with myself, and understanding myself and understanding what I wanted out of life and who I was and my ability to make decisions and trust myself as a mom and all of that. And I really suffered without knowing it. And then after a few years of just being comfortable of feeling bad, I realized I was just a shadow, I guess, of myself. And so I started to really work on myself, and that was a real awakening that life could be a whole lot better than it was. I got so used to feeling really average or bad, maybe. And so when I started volunteering for Mother's Helpers, and I saw that there is another way of advocating for yourself earlier, and I guess be working on things for yourself before there was that huge fallout, I went, there's another way. And there is support, there can be support for moms who are struggling to just get through the adjustment of parenting, even if it's just that. So it felt really good to be able to come to that place and be there and support moms who are struggling where I didn't know that I even needed that help. And I naturally empathize, I naturally feel all the feelings that my clients experience, but also now from a professional perspective, I feel like I have some tools and some ability to say, can be different, and have you tried this, and here's some strategies to find and shift those difficult feelings and experiences.
So that I'm sure is contributes to why we get such good feedback from both of you, because both of you have that some understanding and can relate and all of those things. It's not quite often as a client they feel this kind of difference in power, and it's like you're the expert and I'm the I'm not. And and what's really helpful is, we don't do that anyway. We see the person as having a lot of wisdom and about themselves, being an expert of themselves, and kind of just helping to draw that out of them. But also I think that when you've got some lived experience, or you've got some ways in which you relate, it's not kind of like it's not a difference in kind of you go through problems and I don't, like it's like we all actually we all have this experience, and so what you're experiencing is quite a normal response, which is helpful, I think, because there's a lot of judgment, isn't there, about towards themselves, and so it is helpful to talk to someone who doesn't make them feel like they're unusual or for struggling, and
we know
sorry, Leah.
that when you've had one episode or more of anxiety or depression, you're more susceptible to another. So I know that I need to always work on my own well-being. So when I'm talking to my clients, I get it. And like, you're doing that to help your situation shift or change or be better, but I'm doing it as well, even though I'm years on from that intensity of that postnatal depression and anxiety. I'm still always working towards well-being and always trying to keep myself in the best place I can be. And I'm always susceptible to dip back into those more difficult and emotions.
100% relate to that. And I think, mental well-being is something that we should all be working on, but if you have experienced depression or anxiety, it's something that you really have to take care of. It's not just a nice to have. It becomes, I know the consequences of if I don't. So you've both mentioned that you're social workers, but do you want to also just give a little bit of detail about, any training you've done or any experiences that you've had, just so that people know that when they do, they know that you're a social worker. But if there's anything else you wanted to add to that picture about what else you bring to the table, qualification or training wise.
Well, I can go first. I have before I did social work, I started my professional development, I guess, as I did a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology with an interest in child development. And because I always wanted to work with either mums or children, that was what I always wanted to do right from the time I started. I was in high school still. And then so I went on and did a degree in rehabilitation, which really helps me in my goal setting parts of life. And, rehabilitation doesn't necessarily have to be from massive change events. It can be from it's not just small things, but from things like depression, anxiety. It's all rehabilitating back into a different life. So that's really useful. And then I also have I'm far too overqualified in pieces of paper, but
I hear you.
I have a passion for study, and if I could keep going, I would. But I have a postgrad diploma in perinatal mental health, which is helpful in understanding babies and mums. And so that when I studied that, I learned a lot about attachment and also talking about good enough parenting, which I talk about a lot with my clients. Is actually you can just get by on good enough sometimes, and that's enough. And then I've also done further study around acceptance commitment therapy, cognitive behavior therapy, and I'm actually just about to start some family systems therapy as well. Ooh. Because I think that's important when we're talking to mums, and a lot of it's family related. It's not just that mum, it's that interaction with your partner or with your parents. I really enjoy studying, and I enjoy learning. So it adds to the tools I have to help people, I guess.
Yeah. Thanks, Gena. Leah, your background and your social work experience.
My social work background is working with families in different capacities, working with around the tamariki or in community family supports. And then more recently, since I started working with Mothers Helpers, doing some independent study on acceptance and commitment therapy. And I think a lot of just my own interest too in what is good enough, what is a good mom, how do you retain your own sense of self and your own humanity when you're doing lots of roles as mom or wife or partner or worker or sister or mother or daughter. So that's kind of my own independent passion, I suppose, and it's not a formal kind of qualification, but it's something I really care a lot about, that how the idea of retaining a lot of sense of self when you're holding all these precious people in your hands, but you're also still trying to look after yourself and be your own self. So that's actually what I care about, but it's very informal. That's what I I feel is so important to the journey that so many of our clients have, that they're adjusting to finding ways to still be humans, but be mothers, to still be partners, but still be mothers and workers and all of that, and juggling all those roles. But I feel really passionate about like finding that balance. And I guess I do a lot of my own introspective work, trying to work out how does that look and how do I do that for myself too.
Yeah, and I honestly think that the best clinicians and therapists are reflecting all the time on their own stuff, because yeah, I think that's a huge part of being good at your work, is whether it's kind of gone through yourself, or is going through yourself, and it's that constant reflection, which is not easy, but it's also but it's a big part of it, in my opinion.